Cheers. Pressure increases day by day, and I have decided to succumb to the pressure. Yes, finally, I have succumbed to the pressure to deliver a lecture on postmodernism slash pop culture slash culture studies. Now, that would be a different lecture series altogether, but let's start with the postmodern nexus between popular culture and culture studies, with special reference of Stuart Hall, Max Horkheimer, and Theodor Adorno. You know, when we talk about politics of representation, we actually talk about Buladi. Yes, we do. And when we talk about Buladi, we talk about AIDS. Now, when Adorno and Horkheimer were writing, they somehow just survived the Nazi hegemony. And as you all know, that culture industry has always already been predicated on the establishment of uniformity. Popular culture, you know, it has always predicated on uniformity, and a kind of popular culture is based on a totalitarian hegemony. And what is that totalitarian hegemony like? The totalitarian hegemony has always already been built and structured along the lines of uniformity. So uniformity somehow becomes a key to the totalitarian hegemonization of popular culture. Now, culture within the site of culture industry becomes almost a site of rubric of conjuncture. And what is that conjuncture? Conjuncture is something that could be theoretically aligned with Felix Guattari and Gilles Deleuze's theory of rhizome or rhizomatic structure. And also this conjuncture could be very similar to what we call democracy, because conjuncture allows for all sorts of diversities, pluralities, multiplicities. Similarly, democracy is hopefully is based on pluralities, multiplicities, and all sorts of diversities. So in that regard, it is very close to the postmodern or postmodern concept of Gilles Deleuze and Felix Guattari's rhizoanalysis and rhizomatic structure, which doesn't have a beginning, doesn't have a middle, doesn't have an end, and you cannot find the depth. You cannot find the depth of rhizome. So rhizome cannot be assessed in terms of depth. It can only be assessed in terms of mappability. It cannot be assessed how deep it has gone into. It can only be mapped. So all rhizome has is the mappability of it. And civil rights movements, post-colonial studies, which I have been running a lecture series, feminism already took over. And so uniformity will not do. So one thing is pretty certain, that you talk about feminist studies, you talk about post-colonial studies, you talk about culture studies, one thing we have no space for, one thing we have to be able to dispense with is uniformity. Uniformity doesn't have any place for rhizome, for any kind of celebration of pluralities and diversities, because uniformity hegemonizes into a totalitarian Nazi-like state. So the consumers, coming back to culture studies, consumers are always aware of their respective identities. And identitarian cultural studies of Stuart Hall, therefore becomes absolutely critical here. And this and this identitarian politics took off with Adorno and Horkheimer, Theodor Adorno and Max Horkheimer, the Frankfurt School of Marxists, as it were, and only on the basis of class. So when I say class, we have to be very critical about modernist, Arnoldian snobbishness, kind of cynicism, snobbery of high culture. And what is high culture? High culture is a kind of a modern concept which creates a bit of a hierarchy, cultural hierarchy between high culture and low culture. Because high culture is culture and low culture is no culture. Yes, low culture is no culture, and low culture is popular culture, is mass culture. Anything within the rubric of modernism is a mass culture, is a pop culture, is a popular culture, is no culture. So low culture becomes no culture in high modernism. And we can think about Arnold theorization of culture and anarchy during the Victorian period, and also Ezra Pound's and Eliot's and others, the high modernists of the earlier parts of the 20th century. But in Stuart Hall, it's both different and equal. I am different from you and I am equal to you. I repeat myself, I am different from you and I am equal to you. So the dichotomy or the hierarchy between difference and equality goes for a toss in culture studies. And unlike different and superior or inferior, so the hierarchy of superiority of high culture and the inferiority of low culture goes for a toss. And why does it go for a toss? Because this de-hierarchization between high culture and low culture, between mass culture and high culture, is the rubric that creates conjuncture, democracy, and Felix Guattari and Gilles Deleuze's rhizomatic structure, as opposed to psychoanalytic structure. Because we have to go back to psychoanalysis, because psychoanalysis, Freudian psychoanalysis, is incredibly modern, because it talks about depth. And the postmodern version of rhizoanalysis is a deconstruction of that psychoanalysis, because it just completely destabilizes that depth-based Freudian psychoanalysis. So psychoanalysis needs to be critiqued through Deleuze and Guattari's rhizoanalysis. And then rhizoanalysis creates the site of rhizome, and thence to democracy, and thence to conjuncture, something that Stuart Hall has been talking about in culture studies. And therefore, cultural studies is a debate. And what kind of debate? It's a debate that each cultural product is a debate, and each cultural product is in conversation with other cultural products. And therefore, there is a theoretical site of dialogism between these cultural products. One cultural product is in conversation with, is in dialogue with other cultural products. So there is dialogism between or amongst multiple cultural products simultaneously. And this dialogue creates the discourse of conjuncture. Yes, this dialogue creates the discourse of conjuncture. And when the dialogue creates the discourse of conjuncture, so the hierarchy of spoken form being the high culture and written form being the low culture, or spoken form being the master and written form being the slave, becomes obsolete. And when the hierarchy of spoken form as the master and written form as the slave goes, then we introduce post-structuralism. And Jacques Derrida, as from my previous uploads, comes right into the rubric of this theoretical parlance of culture studies as well. So, therefore, culture studies is a discursive deconstruction of popular culture, as it were, and it dehierarchizes the spoken form as the master narrative and written form as the slave narrative. And what does that do? It creates a noise, and noise becomes a site of conjuncture. And yes, noise becomes a site of conjuncture. And when noise becomes a site of conjuncture, it creates disagreement. And this disagreement becomes another rubric of this conjuncture, because this disagreement and the noise, they are good words. Noise is a good noise, much like noise is a very good noise. And therefore, when I teach in my classroom and students ask plenty of questions, and almost that classroom becomes rhizome, conjuncture, democracy, and that noise is a good noise, pretty noise, a post-structural noise, a Derridian noise, a Deleuzian noise, a Guattarian noise, and a noise that culture studies always deconstructs and discursively celebrates. Therefore, it critiques. What does it critique, this noise? It critiques any kind of hegemony, like Nazi or fascist, because that Nazi or fascist hegemony leads to harmony, and harmony is a bad word. And why harmony is a bad word? Because harmony creates totalitarian fascism, a sort of site of German Nazi dictatorial regimentation. And capitalism loves this fascist Nazi uniformity, and capitalism absolutely hates rhizome, hates noise, and hates conjuncture, and hates democracy. So basically, when Sunsilk or say wheat or anything, they say it will give you the silky ball or the silky hair, and an absolutely unique touch for you. So what it promises the customers or the consumers that we will all be unique together. Yes, we will all be unique together. And how could you be? And this is why this uniqueness is a deferral, a permanent postponement of the arrival of the promise. Why it happens? It happens because of LCD. What is LCD? LCD is the lowest common denominator. Now, when you go to a shop to buy a wheat, we don't ask the shop owner to give me a wheat. We ask, please give me a khubsurat ehsas. When we go to buy Tata tea, we don't buy Tata tea. We ask for, public awareness, jagore, jagore, jagore. So when we ask for agarbatti, dhupkati, then we don't ask for agarbatti, we ask for Mayer Anubhuti. So, and when we buy nano gari, we don't buy nano gari, we buy domestic, public, conjugal happiness. So this is how all the abstract feelings are concretized as lowest common denominator. And when they are concretized in lowest common denominator, as LCD I was talking about, what does it do? It can package and then sell you in Amazon and Flipkart as simulation. We will surely meet again with more of Stuart Hall, more of Adorno, more of Horkheimer, more of Derrida, and more of popular culture and culture studies. But we have to take leave for the time being, and stay safe, stay home, stay healthy. See you soon.